I guess you could tell that by the screen. Yeah, you could tell by the screen. Israel has turned away from Elohim and relied on these silly idols of gold and wood to cause their deliverance. They didn't consult Elohim or his word. They were being foolish, and now they're going to pay the price for their foolishness. In the first verse we have Hosea 8 verse 1. Put the trumpet to your lips. Like an eagle the enemy comes against the house of Yahweh, because they've transgressed my covenant and rebelled against my Torah. Now Elohim says he's going to strike Israel like an eagle. And you know, an eagle, once again, Discovery Channel is a great thing. Very intelligent and tactical predator. You ever seen it get one of them little rabbits or something? Yeah, poor little thing never sees it coming, does he? Happens real quick. Well, Elohim is warning the judgment is coming. And he says why judgment is coming again. He says, because they have transgressed my covenant and rebelled against my Torah. He makes that very, very plain to them, exactly why he's destroying them. In Isaiah 24, verses 5 and 6, we read, the earth is also polluted by its inhabitants, for they transgressed Torah, violated statutes, broke the everlasting covenant. Therefore a curse devours the earth, and those who live in it are held guilty. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men are left. And that word for curse, once again, the Hebrew word Allah. It's because they didn't do what he said is why we're in the predicament we're in today. In Leviticus 18, starting at verse 24, we read, do not defile yourselves by any of these things, for by all these the nations which I'm casting out before you have become defiled. For the land has become defiled, therefore I have visited its punishment upon it. So the land has spewed out its inhabitants. But as for you, you are to keep my statutes and my judgments, and shall not do any of these abominations, neither the native nor the alien who sojourns among you. For the men of the land who have been before you have done all these abominations, and the land has become defiled, so that the land may not spew you out, should you defile it, as it has spewed out the nation which has been before you. For whoever does any of these abominations, those persons who do so shall be cut off from among their people. Thus you are to keep my charge, that you do not practice any of the abominable customs which have been practiced before you, so as not to defile yourselves with them. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. You know, keep in mind, he says over and over again why he destroys Israel, why he destroys Judah. It is because they didn't keep his covenant, they broke his Torah.
But do you think the people do that, though?
He told them. He had Hosea there to tell them. They had Isaiah there to tell them.
Yeah.
They had Jeremiah there to tell them. They had Ezekiel there to tell them. You know, that's what all them prophets were for, was to let them know. And then, but keep in mind, at the same time, they had a lot of false prophets that said everything's cool. Elohim won't destroy us. Well, look, we have his temple right here. He won't do anything. He won't send anyone to destroy his people. We're still better than the other guys, no matter what we do. Not very smart. Leviticus 20, starting at verse 22, says, you are therefore to keep all my statutes and all my ordinances and do them, so that the land which I'm bringing you to live will not spew you out. Moreover, you shall not follow the customs of the nation which I shall drive out before you. For they did all these things, and therefore I have abhorred them. And what is it earlier in Leviticus that he's talking about? Talking about dietary laws. He's talking about the sexual immorality, incest, bestiality. All these things, they're doing it all. Okay? Other gods. You know, you would think you wouldn't have to tell people, don't have sex with animals. That's against the law. You wouldn't think you'd have to tell people that, would you? But you'd think you wouldn't have to tell people, Don't sacrifice your children to false gods. You wouldn't think you'd have to tell people that, would you? But we have the same thing today. For the sake of convenience and luxury, we sacrifice thousands of children in this country every day. So, same thing. Verse 24, hence I've said to you, you are to possess their land, and I myself will give it to you to possess it. A land flowing with milk and honey. I'm Yahweh, your Elohim, who has separated you from the peoples. You are therefore to make a distinction between the clean animal and the unclean, between the unclean bird and the clean. You shall not make yourselves detestable by animal or by bird or by anything that creeps on the ground, which I've separated for you as unclean. So you make yourself, when you eat these things that he says you're not supposed to eat, you make yourself detestable to him. You make yourself detestable to him. The same word is translated abomination. You make yourself an abomination to him. Yeah.
Are ducks unclean animals?
No. They may as well be. Blech. I don't like ducks. They're mighty gamey. But they're clean, very clean. Thus you are to be holy to me, for I, Yahweh, am holy, and I've set you apart for the peoples to be mine. Also in 2 Kings 17, starting in verse 7, now this came about because the sons of Israel had sinned against Yahweh, their Elohim, who had brought them up from the land of Egypt, from under the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And they had feared other gods. Well, isn't that interesting? That was very interesting. And walked in the customs of the nations whom Yahweh had driven out from before the sons of Israel, and the customs of the kings of Israel which they had introduced. And the sons of Israel did things secretly which were not right against Yahweh their Elohim. Moreover, they built for themselves high places in all their towns, from watchtower to fortified city. Okay. We have a new technical difficulty here. Okay. Verse 10. And they set for themselves sacred pillars and asherim on every high hill and under every green tree. And there they burned incense on all the high places, as the nations did, which Yahweh had carried away to exile before them. And they did evil things, provoking Yahweh. And they served idols, concerning which Yahweh had said to them, you shall not do this thing. Yet Yahweh warned Israel and Judah through all his prophets and every seer, saying, turn from your evil ways and keep my commandments, my statutes, according to all the Torah which I commanded your fathers, and which I sent to you through my servants, the prophets. However, they did not listen, but stiffened their neck like their fathers, who did not believe in Yahweh their Elohim. And they rejected his statutes and his covenant which he made with their fathers, and his warnings with which he had warned them, and they followed vanity and became vain, and went after the nations which surrounded them, concerning which Yahweh had commanded them not to do like them. And they forsook all the commandments of Yahweh their Elohim, and made for themselves molten images, even 2 calves, and made an Asherah, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served Baal. Then they made their sons and their daughters pass through the fire, and practiced divination and enchantments, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of Yahweh, provoking him. So Yahweh was very angry with Israel, and removed them from his sight. None was left except the tribe of Judah. Also Judah did not keep the commandments of Yahweh their Elohim, but walked in the customs which Israel had introduced. And Yahweh rejected all the descendants of Israel, and afflicted them, and gave them into the hand of plunderers, until he cast them out of his sight. And when he had torn Israel from the house of David, they made Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, king. Then Jeroboam drove Israel away from following Yahweh and made them commit a great sin. And the sons of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They did not depart from them until Yahweh removed Israel from his sight, as he spoke through all his servants, the prophets. So Israel was carried away into exile from their own land to Assyria until this day. So we had warning after warning after warning. It didn't matter. The people were not going to be obedient to his Torah. So they felt the wrath of the Father. They felt his wrath. I read this stuff in 2 Kings and Isaiah and Hosea and Leviticus and Deuteronomy and all these places, and I think, why wouldn't Christians have an inkling that maybe these laws are important if breaking them made Elohim destroy two of his nations? Wouldn't you think that we ought to at least look at these? But it doesn't happen.
I have a question.
What?
Why would people, when they know that Elohim rescued them from Egypt, and why would they worship something that really was bad? Dumb stuff like sacrificing your children. That just
Like Christmas trees?
dumb.
Like Christmas trees?
Yeah. Well,
Why would they do that?
well,
I don't know.
sorry.
Yep. Verse 2. They cry out to me, my Elohim, we of Israel know you. They cry out to me. My Elohim, we of Israel know you. They claim to know him. But they're disobedient to his Torah. They claim to know him, but they're disobedient to him. Scripture tells us if we don't obey his commandments, if we don't obey his Torah, and we say we know him, we are a liar. 1 John 2, starting at verse 3, and by this we know that we've come to know him, if we keep his commandments. The one who says, I've come to know him and does not keep his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. But whoever keeps his word, in him the love of Elohim has truly been perfected. By this we know that we're in him. The one who says he abides in him ought himself to walk in the same manner as he walked. Beloved, I'm not writing a new commandment to you, but an old commandment which you've had from the beginning. The old commandment is the word which you've heard. I can safely say that most every person I know that became aware of his Torah and embraced it now knew what this passage meant. To say, I didn't know him before I started being obedient to him. I know I didn't. I thought I did. I didn't know nothing. He was a stranger in actuality. We read in Matthew 7, starting in verse 21, not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father who's in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? And if you'll notice, none of those things are in the Torah to do. Don't have to do any of those things. Verse 23, that I'll declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. John 14:15, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. John 14, starting in verse 21, he who has my commandments and keeps them, he it is that loves me. And he who loves me shall be loved by my Father, and I'll love him and will disclose myself to him. Judas, not Iscariot, said to him, Master, what then has happened that you're going to disclose yourself to us and not to the world? Yeshua answered and said to him, if anyone loves me, he'll keep my word. And my Father will love him, and will come to him and make our abode with him. He who does not love me does not keep my words. And the word which you hear is not mine, but the Father's who sent me. Did you notice what Judas not Iscariot, said? He's going to be disclosed. He said, Master, what are you going to disclose to us and not the rest of the world? In other words, there's just a few. Okay? Just a few. And he said, I'm going to tell you the secret. If you keep my word, that means you love me. That's the secret. If you don't keep my word, you don't love me. We read in Deuteronomy 10, verses 12 and 13, one of my favorite passages. And now, Israel, what does Yahweh your Elohim require from you but to fear Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in all his ways and love him? Well, that's just what Yeshua said. That's just what John said. And to serve Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul, and to keep Yahweh's commandments and his statutes, for which I'm commanding you today for your good. Verse 3 of Hosea 8. Israel has rejected the good. The enemy will pursue him. Since Israel is pursuing evil, Elohim is going to cause evil to pursue him, to pursue Israel. Verse 4. They've set up kings, but not by me. They've appointed princes, but I did not know it. With their silver and gold, they've made idols for themselves, that they might be cut off. Israel didn't use the word of Elohim to determine their leaders. Who was supposed to be king over Israel? A line of people. Coming from whom? David. Had to be a descendant of David. Well, they didn't use that to choose their king. He said, they set up kings, but not by me. It's not anything I approved. The very first king of Israel was Jeroboam. We just read about him. That was in 931 BC approximately. He was not in the line of David. Israel never had a leader that was in the line of David when they split off from the southern kingdom. Not once. They didn't care what Elohim commanded. They're going to have leaders that suited their own purposes. Their first leader, Jeroboam, set up golden calves. He set one up in Bethel and the other one up in Samaria, in the southern part, for people to worship. Verse 5. He's rejected your calf, O Samaria, saying, my anger burns against them. How long will they be incapable of innocence? Your calf is rejected, O Samaria. Samaria was the capital of Israel. When Ahab became king over Israel, he married Jezebel, now her father was a Phoenician priest, and he was a devout Baal worshiper. Jezebel transported hundreds of prophets of Baal into Israel. Many in Israel became Baal worshipers. We read, my anger burns against them. Now, the city of Samaria is still a desolate place. Even though it's a beautiful place, it's thoroughly desolate and empty. It's under the judgment of Elohim. Look at verse 6. For from Israel is even this. A craftsman made it so it is not Elohim. Surely the calf of Samaria will be broken to pieces. The golden calf was not a gift from Elohim. It was merely something made by men. The attempted worship of Elohim through the golden calf incurred Elohim's wrath at the beginning and end of Israel's history in the land. It was the same thing at the beginning, same thing at the end. Verse 7. For they sow the wind and they reap the whirlwind. The standing grain has no heads. It yields no grain. Should it yield, strangers would swallow it up. The judgment will consist not only of an enemy destroying the land, but it's also going to be famine. Verse 8. Israel is swallowed up. They're now among the nations like a vessel in which no one delights. Israel's swallowed up. Israel was totally judged and swallowed up by the neighboring nations. Just swallowed up. Totally gone. Jeremiah 50, verse 17 says, Israel is a scattered flock. The lions have driven them away. The first one who devoured him was the king of Assyria, and the last one who has broken his bones is Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon. Also, Ezekiel 36, verse 3, therefore prophesy and say, thus says Adonai Yahweh, for good cause they've made you desolate and crushed you from every side, that you should become a possession of the rest of the nations. And you've been taken up in the talk and the whispering of the people. See, they became, the people talked about them. They talked about, I guess their Elohim isn't so great. You see, they were a total disgrace to the Father. They shamed his name among the people with their disobedience, and then him having to judge them. Verse 9, for they've gone up to Assyria like a wild donkey all alone. Ephraim has hired lovers. Ephraim, they hired lovers. Israel went to Assyria to pay them off for help. They tried to pay them to help them to assist against other enemies. And what did Assyria do? Took them captive.
What exactly is that phrase, Ephraim had hired lovers?
That means that they hired people that to embrace instead of Elohim. Yeah. Verse 10, even though they hire allies among the nations, now I will gather them up, and they'll begin to diminish because of the burden of the king of princes. The burden of the king of princes was a tribute or a payment demanded by the king of Assyria. But it didn't actually purchase any security at all. Verse 11, since Ephraim has multiplied altars for sin, they've become altars of sinning for him. It says Ephraim has multiplied altars for sin. Religion is what destroyed Israel. They didn't care about the Torah of Elohim. They only wanted a ritual to appease the people and give them some kind of a sense of security. Okay? Let them think they're having a relationship with the Father through some ritual. It involved golden calves to channel, Christmas trees, things like that. Crosses, that's right. Tammuzes. They wept for Tammuz. Yeah. It involved all those things. Verse 12. Though I wrote for him 10,000 precepts of my Torah, they are regarded as a strange thing. Okay, the term precepts is not there, it was added. And I looked up that term 10,000. It really just means myriads. I wrote for him myriads of my law, my Torah, but they regarded it as a strange thing. They didn't care anything about Elohim's Torah, even though he gave it to them personally. We read in Deuteronomy 4, starting in verse 1. And now, O Israel, listen to the statutes and the judgments which I'm teaching you to perform, in order that you may live and go in and take possession of the land which Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, is giving you. You shall not add to the word which I'm commanding you, nor take away from it, that you may keep the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, which I command you. Your eyes have seen what Yahweh has done in the case of Baal Peor. For all the men who follow Baal Peor, Yahweh your Elohim has destroyed them from among you. But you who held fast to Yahweh your Elohim are alive today, every one of you. See, I have taught you statutes and judgments, just as Yahweh my Elohim commanded me, that you should do thus in the land where you are entering to possess it. So keep and do them, for that is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples, who will hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has an Elohim so near to it as is Yahweh our Elohim whenever we call on him? Or what great nation is there that has statutes and judgments as righteous as this whole Torah which I'm setting before you today? Also in Nehemiah 9, verses 13 and 14, then you did come down on Mount Sinai and did speak with them from heaven. You did give to them just ordinances and true Torah, good statutes and commandments. So you did make known to them your holy Sabbath, and did lay down for them commandments, statutes, and Torah through your servant Moses. See, he gave it to them personally. And they're throwing it away. They regarded his Torah as a strange thing. Okay? Much like it's regarded today. A strange thing. Hosea 4 verse 6 says, many people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because you've rejected knowledge, considered it a strange thing, I'll also reject you from being my priest. Since you've forgotten the Torah of your Elohim, I also will forget your children. They regarded his Torah a strange thing. How's it regarded today? A strange thing. Isn't it? Weird. Has there been a Christian yet that you've told them that you follow the Torah of Elohim, they didn't look at you like you're a kook?
Yeah.
That's the common response, isn't it? You're strange. 2 Kings 17, starting at verse 15. And they rejected his statutes and his covenant which he made with their fathers, and his warnings which he warned them. And they followed vanity and became vain, and went after the nations which surrounded them, concerning which Yahweh had commanded them not to do. And they forsook all the commandments of Yahweh their Elohim. Strange thing. And made for themselves molten images, even 2 calves, and made an Asherah, and worshipped all the host of heaven, and served Baal. Nehemiah 9 verse 26, and they became disobedient and rebelled against you, and cast your Torah behind their backs, and killed your prophets who had admonished them, so that they might return to you, and they committed great blasphemies. Isaiah 30 verse 9, for this is a rebellious people, false sons, sons who refuse to listen to the instruction, that's the Hebrew word Torah, of Yahweh. In Jeremiah 6 verses 16 and 17, thus says Yahweh, stand by the ways and see and ask for the ancient paths, where the good way is, and walk in it. And you shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk in it. It's a strange thing. And I set watchmen over you, saying, listen to the sound of the trumpet. But they said, we will not listen. You know that passage right there in verse 16 where it says, where the good way is, see and ask for the ancient paths, where the good way is, and walk in it. And then that next phrase, and you shall find rest for your souls. Where else have you heard that in Scripture? I'll tell you where. Yeshua was saying, my burden is light, and it's there that you'll find rest for your souls. What's that light burden he's talking about? The ancient paths, the Torah. That's why he quoted Jeremiah when he said that. Hosea 8 verse 13. As for my sacrificial gifts, they sacrifice the flesh and eat it, but Yahweh has taken no delight in them. Now he will remember their iniquity and punish them for their sins. They will return to Egypt. The people would go through the motions of doing the offerings, the sacrifices, but it didn't affect their lives in the slightest. They were killing their animals, that's my duty, and just going on. It was meaningless religious activity. That's all it was. The Egypt here symbolizes the captivity that they were going to be cast into Assyria, and that's what happened. They'll return to Egypt, just meaning they're going to be captives again. Verse 14, for Israel has forgotten his maker and built palaces, and Judah has multiplied fortified cities. But I'll send a fire on its cities that it may consume its palatial dwellings. Well, Elohim judged the northern kingdom of Israel very harshly. And to this day, Samaria let's take a little walk through modern-day Samaria. Here, this is taken in March 2010. Sheep and camels roam with their masters through this desolate terrain. Samaria, Israel. There's Bedouin camps along the road from Samaria to Jerusalem. March 2010. How would you like to live in those palaces? That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Air conditioner's broke.
Yeah, air conditioners broke. Now today, the capital city of Samaria is a pile of fallen stones. It's a testimony of a once proud and arrogant peoples, all 10 tribes. Any questions on Hosea 8? It's you know, I know at times when I'm up here, I really seem to get down on Christianity, but their way is destruction. If someone is heading to destruction, I don't think patting them on the back and saying, yeah, is the thing to do. Do like my wife when I'm driving, start screaming. Well, she doesn't scream much anymore, but.
I don't know if I did that.
That's not what the prophets were told to do.
Yeah, the prophets weren't told to pat them on the back and.
Well, maybe they did.
Yeah, I'll grab the steering wheel. Yeah. Yeah, no, they weren't told to do that. Yeah.
But if we're not to evangelize, what's the point of getting mad at them and telling them what they're doing wrong?
You know, that's a good point. We don't evangelize. Evangelism is an attempted conversion. Okay? We don't convert anybody, and we know that. Elohim is the only one that can change the hearts and minds of his people. But to state what Elohim says is right and wrong, that's just his word. And I don't even tell them unless they ask.
So really, though, we should speak up and speak out on truth.
Yeah.
And not cow down to the secular, stand up for our rights.
Oh yeah, don't cow down. No, we are to be strong and firm in his word. There's no doubt about it. It's we've already tried to warn a lot of people. In Ezekiel it says, if you don't warn the people and they die in their sin, their blood's upon you.
But if you're keeping Torah,
You're telling them.
keeping Torah, yeah, but that generates questions.
Yeah, uh-huh.
If they have if they're meant to understand it, we're supposed to answer them.
Right.
Regardless.
And that's what we do. But keep in mind, too, Ezekiel was supposed to go to Israel and say that. He wasn't supposed to go to Babylon and say that. He wasn't supposed to go to Assyria and say that. He was, that's just where we're supposed to go. Well, let's take a look at Jonah. Where did he go? He went to Nineveh. What was Nineveh? That was the capital of Assyria. And what was his message? Repent. That was it, wasn't it? That was his message. Repent.
But he didn't want to go.
Oh, no, he didn't want to go. No, because Assyria was so brutal. He knew Elohim was going to judge him, and he said, good.
But
He
he went.
didn't want to. Yeah, he had to be convinced.
Yeah, he was.
He was in that belly of the whale for, it says, 3 days and 3 nights. And okay, first of all, we're going to talk about Jonah, but arguing over whether it's a whale or a fish, I don't even know if there's a Hebrew word for whale, or was back then. Fish. Bats were classified as birds, which makes sense to me. They fly around. They're about that big. What the heck? Okay. Jonah. Did he die in that whale?
No. He got spit out.
After 3 days.
He spit out on the beach.
See, I think he died. It says he prayed after he was swallowed. Okay, if you're swallowed by a whale, how long is it till you start praying? Well, not till tomorrow. I ain't praying till tomorrow. See, no, he whoop, ran away. And then I think he died. And it's, you can kind of hear the description that darkness is overcoming him, and I believe he died. And then what happens if you stay in the belly of something like that for 3 days? What happens to your skin?
Acid eats it.
Acid eats it up. So you're looking at some guy who comes up out of the water, was spit out by a whale, and he's green and purple. And he says, repent. That's right. Okay.